Ladies and gentlemen, can I have a big round of applause for the Research and Planning Director of Thinkbox, Mr. Matt Hill.
The clicker somewhere.
We're looking for the clicker. I think Thierry Tachny left it here. There you go, sir.
There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, give him a big round of applause. Matt Hill.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today. I'm absolutely amazed at your ability to listen to a series of presentations in, I think I've counted about 5 different languages so far. So, now normally at an event like this, the last presentation would be maybe a bit lighter. I mean, you've had, a series of presentations this morning, a lot to take in, a lot to digest. Not in Brussels. In Brussels, they finish with econometrics. So, if you've got that can of Red Bull you've been saving, crack it open now, have a glug, and let's talk some numbers, all right? Let me introduce Thinkbox, what we do, and how we work. So, we are funded by the commercial broadcasters in the UK. So Channel 4, ITV, Sky Media, UK TV and Turner. We're the trade marketing body for TV. And our fundamental ambition is to help agencies and to help advertisers get the best out of what TV has to offer. We do this through conducting lots of research. Research is the best way to understand how the world is changing and what these changes mean and what they mean to advertisers and the opportunities that advertisers have to take advantage of these different changes. So we've conducted a lot of research around these changing behaviours. The view from the sofa was a study looking at the advent of multi-screening, second screening, people using devices while they're watching TV, so that we could understand the effect that was having and the opportunities that was being created. TV in demand was about looking at the similarities and the difference between how we view linear TV and how we view video on demand. And TV advertising everywhere was taking a step back and looking at all these new screens and places where we can watch content and how advertising fits into this new ecosystem. But we also like to understand effectiveness. And we need to understand effectiveness because it's important for us to understand how advertising actually works. And it's important for us as an industry to be able to demonstrate the power of advertising. Sometimes measuring how advertising works is very difficult, and it's not necessarily that transparent or easy to see. So we feel that it's our job to break it down, to understand the impact that different media channels are having for advertisers, and demonstrate this using very robust analysis, so that marketing directors can talk to their financial directors and their MDs and explain why they need to invest money and what return that they're going to achieve from it. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. But before I do, I just want to talk to you a little bit about our research and why it's so important that when we're conducting research that we're using very robust analysis. We're not simply conducting online surveys, asking people about how they behave. People are notorious at being bad at understanding their own behavior and being able to explain how they're affected by advertising. Here's a nice example which shows why just looking at the surface level doesn't really help you dig down into the truth behind what drives people and what affects them.
I make a big effort to try and skip the adverts. I don't like the adverts. I remember the Citroen ad because it was around about the time when I bought my Citroen.
There you go. A bit of research gold. Every now and then you stumble across a beautiful piece of content that tells you exactly what you want to see. So I'm going to kick off by talking about our latest econometric study, which we've called Payback 4. Now, understanding how advertising works and the impact it has is not an easy job. It's very difficult to isolate its effects. And econometric analysis is probably the best way we have at a macro level of understanding the influence of different media. In terms of how econometric works, in a simple way, if you think about something like sun cream sales, you look at the number of sales of sun cream across a period of time, and what you try to do as an econometrician is to break down all the different influences that could come into play which will drive overall sales. So you'll start by looking at the obvious areas. You'll look at temperature, and then you'll take temperature into account and factor that in. Then you'll look at promotions and offers and sales, and you take that into account and factor that in. And once you've taken all the outside variables and factored them into play, then you can start overlaying the different media spends. And then using that data, you can see how the media spend has driven sales when it's on, when it's not on, when it's working in conjunction with another media channel, and when it's not. And that's the basics of how econometrics work. Now, I'm very much aware that I work for the TV trade body. We have an agenda. We're looking to demonstrate the power of TV. So whenever we conduct econometric studies like this, looking to understand ROI, two things are very, very important to us. Number one, the study needs to be very robust. It needs to be comprehensive. It's not about picking and choosing some of the best examples of how we know advertising on TV has worked. It's about looking across the market as a whole and finding the average return that is delivered. But also, it's very important we find the right person to work with, because we need to work with a very independent, a neutral party who can conduct this analysis for us, but also a party that has access to a lot of data, and they have access to lots of advertising information who are willing to share that data and average it out so that we can share the results. And Ubiquity are the perfect partner for us in this case. They're media auditors in the UK, and they audit around about 70% of the total auditing market. And so this means that in this study, we were able to conduct econometric analysis across 3 years for 10 categories, 100 different advertisers, and we were working with somebody whose sole purpose is to be media neutral. And so therefore we have a very credible source that we can use to help find our findings. So the first thing that we wanted to look at was just understanding effectiveness and understanding different levels of effectiveness for different channels. So the best way of thinking about this chart is to say that if one exposure for TV, so one 30-second spot, delivers 100 sales, then the equivalent exposure on press, so one print ad, would deliver 52 sales. So this is saying on an exposure by exposure basis, TV is twice as effective as the next closest medium. But what happens when we take cost into account? The next chart is breaking down the return on investment that's delivered when we're looking across the campaign as a whole and any resulting ad stock following the campaign, and we measure all sales that have been driven by each individual media channel and take away the spend on each of those different media channels. So this gives us the average return on investment that's been delivered. And we can see that TV is the best profit generator, delivering an average of £1.79 for every £1 spent on TV. Now, we've also plotted 2008 to 2011 on this chart here. So that was the previous study. And we can see there's been a little bit of movement over time. So TV has grown, radio has stayed pretty much the same, press has slightly grown, online display and both out of home have dropped back. But this is the average across all those 10 categories. There is quite a bit of difference when we start to split it down into different kinds of advertisers. So let's start by looking at retail. Now, retail across the board delivers pretty strong payback. TV and press, fairly similar in terms of the overall level of payback that they're delivering. And we can see over time that there's been a bit of a change. We see in the past, print was actually the highest in terms of the ROI it delivered. However, it has come down. TV's effectiveness has grown, mainly because in the UK it's got a bit cheaper because there's been more inventory. Radio and online display could drop back a little bit. But in general, retail is a very strong category in terms of return on investment. Also, as part of this study, what we want to do is take this data and look, based on these levels of payback, what are the actual optimal levels of spend that should be invested in the different media channels. And so the current share of TV spend here is around 49%, whereas the optimal level of spend in TV, because of its effectiveness, should be around the 60% mark. For finance, we can see that TV really is the key media leading the way, delivering nearly £2.50 for every £1 spent. Radio is second, then press drops down. Here, again, the actual spend in TV is around the 50% mark, whereas the optimal level should be more around the 60% mark. And then the final category I want to talk about is FMCG. Now, there are two quite interesting things that you see when you look at this chart. Number one is that TV is by far the lead medium and the most effective when it comes to return on investment. The second thing you spot is that it's actually negative. FMCG advertisers don't actually generate a return out of their advertising. And there's a couple of things that drive this. Number one is that FMCG brands in this study tend to have quite a long tail. So what we see in the retail and finance sectors is that most of the brands that are advertising are fairly big and they're spending heavily in all the media channels. And what we tend to find is that with ROI, scale matters. And the bigger you are, the bigger your return is. With FMCG, there is a long tail of smaller brands who are investing smaller amounts of money in the different channels. And as a result, that average return is dropping down. But also for FMCG, the importance of brand and building brand is absolutely fundamental. And so often, FMCG brands are having to market in order just to maintain their market share, to keep their competitors from coming in and stealing their market share. And therefore, their spend isn't delivering a return in the same way that it is for other advertisers. And then the other aspect is that there can be a bit of a halo effect. So FMCG brands will be advertising one main brand, and then they'll see an actual halo effect for the other brands within their own range, which weren't necessarily being advertised or being spent on. Or it could be about delivering effect beyond that of advertising return. It could be about securing shelf space, or it could be about securing a better position in a supermarket. So that gives us an idea of the actual overall results, what returns are delivered for different kinds of categories. But what I want to talk to you a bit is about why. Why is it that TV is this effective? What is it that drives TV's effectiveness? The first thing I want to talk about is the unique ability of AV to deliver a really powerful emotional connection. Now, as a trade body, we want to promote TV, and so we run our own TV advertising to speak to marketing directors and to communicate to them the power of TV. Now, I guess the rational approach would be to probably talk about TV's effectiveness. We could do an ad where we talked about how effective TV is and the return that it delivers, and maybe talk about some case studies. But that wouldn't be being true to how the medium actually works. The medium works by building an emotional bond. So when you play you, this is our second ad, and it features Harvey, a dog. Now, Harvey, as a dog, obviously can't actually talk. So the only way that he can communicate with his master is through creating video, because he can do that. So here's our Harvey ad.
Friends, do you really need them? Yes. If you haven't got a friend, then you're just you. There's half as many things that you can do. Who's gonna tell you that you're not a brat? If not your best friend. Do you recall when we did that? Yes. Sharing the brilliant jokes we've had throughout the years. Good times together. It's not the same when you're not there. Friends, a la la poo poo la la.
So we're not a consumer-facing brand. People who see that don't really have a clue who Thinkbox is or what we do. On the day that that ad went live, we had 500,000 hits to our website. That's pretty impressive considering where we're coming from. Harvey's also got, I think, about 50,000 friends on Facebook now. And as a top tip, we can thoroughly recommend that animals and effectiveness has definitely got a positive correlation. We also see this ability of TV to connect emotionally reflected in how consumers perceive TV. By far, it's head and shoulders above the other channels when it comes to actually making you laugh. But why does it matter? Why is connecting emotionally with consumers important? There was an interesting study that was done around 20 years ago where the psychologists involved wanted to understand how we made our decisions. And it was a fairly simple study in that they set up an experiment where they monitored the brain activity of a number of respondents, and they gave them this task where all they had to do was push a button within a 60-second period. And they were told that they could choose at any time during the 60 seconds when they were going to push the button. And they monitored their brain activity. And they were really surprised when they found out that the actual starting point of the decision wasn't in our conscious part of our brain. It was in the subconscious part of our brain, the part of our brain that we don't actually control. And this led the way to this idea that we're not actually as much in control of the decisions we make as we might like to feel that we are. We're acting on gut instinct a lot of the time. Our decisions are started in our subconscious, and it's only going through the rational part of our brain as a sense check, as a filter to make sure that we're making the right decision. And that's how brand building works. That's how brand advertising works. There was a study that was done by the IPA. So the IPA are the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising in the UK. They represent all of the different agencies. And every 2 years, they hold the IPA Effectiveness Awards. And these awards are renowned in the industry because in order to win them, you have to demonstrate through econometric analysis that your campaign has been incredibly effective and a delivered return for your brands. So over 30 years' time, 30 years of data, they've collected a huge amount of information of some of the best campaigns that there have been. And recently they did a study where they wanted to start to split up these different campaigns and understand the differences in terms of what's actually driving effectiveness. And here we can see that when they split them into different kind of creative approaches, the brands that were targeting being famous, that were driving fame, and that were driving an emotional response were the ones that were more likely to achieve strong sales effects and strong profitability. And there were three things that they came to find through this analysis. Number one, that this was true even for rational brands. So think about financial brands or insurance brands. The exact same purpose are true. We're finding a lot with the likes of affiliate marketing websites, that they're using emotional fame-building creatives in order to build their brands. We've got the likes of Compare the Market and Money Supermarket in the UK, and I imagine you've got similar brands that are probably likely using characters in order to promote their services rather than rational arguments, because it's a much more effective way of working. The second aspect is that likability is one of the best early measures of success. So when you want to understand if your creative is going to work, if you test it for likability and the results are positive, it's likely that ad campaign is going to be a success. And the third thing they found was that when planning a campaign, the people who put down as their objective, as their number one objective, was to become famous, to build brand fame, they were the ones that were much more likely to succeed over those who were looking to necessarily, it might be to drive sales or to build awareness. The number one objective being brand fame, that was the key driver to success. The second thing I want to talk about is scale. Now, we often talk about scale in different ways. A lot of marketers talk about reach. Reach is a common metric to be used, but it can be misused often. Reach can be how many times, how many people ever consume a certain type of medium. But what's the measure? And what are we classing as being a view? Are you talking about view every day? Are you talking about weekly? Are you talking about monthly? Are you talking about view within my market? Or are you talking about view globally? The big global brands are very guilty of number wanging, of coming up with big numbers based around anyone in the world has once viewed a video on this site over the last year, and you end up with a big number. If we look at breaking down TV, we can see that commercial TV, this is not including all TV, so we've taken out the BBC, dwarfs the other media channels when it comes to reach, in terms of how many people watch at least once a week, but also in terms of time spent. So how much time do people spend watching this medium? So scale is important. And also TV is incredibly effective when it comes to building scale on different periods of time. Daily, weekly, monthly, all delivering very high levels of reach. So when you're talking to other media channels, when you're talking to other advertisers, always get a sense of when they're talking about reach, what period of time are they looking over? Can you build reach quickly? Again, using the long and short of it data from the IPA Effectiveness Awards, they did a breakdown of all the different brands because they wanted to understand how important scale was and how important share of voice was in terms of marketing communication. And they found that, in general, that share of voice that was higher than their share of market were, all the brands that sat in that area were the brands that were actually on the up, the brands that were growing. And the brands whose share of voice was lower than their share of the market tended to be the brands that were in decline. And the brands where the share of voice was about the same as the share of market were brands that were in equilibrium. So you tend to see this life cycle where, as a growing brand, you need to grow your share of voice over the share of your market in order to continue to grow. And so scale is important in order to deliver that. The third thing I want to talk about is shared viewing. Now, nothing compares to TV when it comes to shared viewing. Cinema is a great experience, a great environment, and yet, again, in terms of how you view, you're likely to be viewing with other people. But cinema can't drive the same scale that TV can drive. We've got a show in the UK which is called Gogglebox, and I don't know if you've got a similar show over here. It's basically a TV program about people watching TV. So they film people watching TV and then they play it back on TV. If it hasn't come over to you yet, I'm sure it will. But it's not what I would class as pure research, but it is what I class as a good bit of entertainment and a nice demonstration of why we love to watch TV together.
Britain's Got Talent, B.
Bring on the loons.
Hello.
Hello,
What's your name?
Jessie J. McParland.
Oh, how cute.
Oh my God, she's going to be singing.
She's going to do opera.
Now I think she's going to dance.
Good luck.
Oh, she's got a bloody samurai sword.
Oh my God.
All right, imagine telling her to go to bed at night.
I'm not sure exactly they're going to be letting her loose near the Queen.
Hi, I'm Ted. I'm from Hammersmith in London, and I'm studying law.
Oh, poor Ted.
Oh, Ted.
Oh, poor Ted.
Get some shampoo.
Oh, dear.
Meaning said only once. What two-word Greek term denotes a word?
He's loved it.
Hapax legonomenon.
Correct.
Fucking hell.
What? How
Hax Magoggalulagong.
could he know that, Love Day?
I mean, he have a stupid name, but he is really clever.
Yeah.
TV is the most incredible shared experience. We spend a lot of time when we're conducting our research filming people watch TV like that so that we can see how they react. And we see them talking about content so much, and we also see them talking about ads. So we wanted to measure this. We wanted to measure how many ad conversations are generated. We conducted a mobile study in real time, asking people if they'd talked about ads within the last 15 minutes. And we found that 10% of the time, people had spoken about an ad that they'd seen. Now, 10% probably doesn't feel like very much, but when you think, in the UK, we've got an average of 20 million people watching TV every evening. And you think of the number of 15-minute intervals you've got across that time. That means that there are 17 million conversations about adverts in the UK every single evening. Word of mouth is powerful, and it's an important way of driving brand fame. So if we go back to our earlier chart where we were talking about fame being a fundamental driver of sales and profitability, driving fame through word of mouth can be an important way of achieving that, getting people talking about your brand. And we did a study with a company called Data to Decisions to try and understand and break this down in terms of how do you actually drive word of mouth? How do you drive conversation about your brand? And we found that around 72% of all brand conversation was generated by paid-for media. So in order to drive conversation, PR, brand news, events, or product and services wasn't enough. You actually need to pay for media in order to drive conversation. And within that, out of that 72%, TV accounted for pretty much 2/3 of all conversation. The fourth thing I want to talk about is the multiplier effect that TV delivers. We're living in a much more complicated world when it comes to the customer journey. We've now got search, we've got affiliate marketing, we've got online display. We're not living in the world where in the past we were able to use unique telephone numbers to understand what media channels were driving the success of our marketing. We're now living in a world where consumers will get exposed to a brand, they'll conduct some research, and then they'll ultimately decide which brand they want to purchase or how they want to buy. So we found that advertisers were tending to look at their data, look at some of their metrics, and they'd see how many people had clicked on a search category or clicked on an online brand and gone through and actually made that purchase, and then attributing all the success down to that final click and not taking into account the actual whole of the customer journey. So this year we wanted to conduct a study to actually break down the importance of other media channels and actually driving that final purchase. And so we've looked at 15 different brands, over £400 million worth of spend. We've worked with Group M in order to do this. And again, we've used econometric modelling in order to break down the effect of different channels. And we've seen that on average, out of all search-driven responses, all search-driven sales, 1/3 of them are being generated by TV in the first place. Out of all display-driven sales, 1/3 of them are being generated by TV, and about 20% of affiliate marketing sales are being driven by TV advertising. So this is important information, ammunition that marketing directors can use to understand the power of TV in the overall marketing mix and how it works alongside other channels. And it shows the ability of TV to drive the success of other channels and to deliver multiplier effects for other media. And then the final point I want to make is talking about trust. Now, trust is an interesting topic at the moment because we're seeing that overall trust in advertising is dropping down. And it's dropping down probably because we're being exposed to more advertising than ever in different places. But TV is still by far the most trusted form of advertising. And it's the most trusted for a couple of reasons. Number one is because the majority of brands that advertise on TV are already fairly well established and consumers are very familiar with them. So any new brands that are advertising on TV generate a halo effect off the back of this. But the second thing is that we have an inherent trust in the channels. We trust the channels that are broadcasting our favourite shows. And so therefore we trust the advertising that is placed within them. So, in summary, we can see that the power of TV is driven by a number of different variables. It's driven by the fact that AV creates this incredibly unique and powerful emotional connection between consumers and brands. And TV can deliver those AV messages on scale, quickly. And when we see these ads, we talk about them. And by talking about them, we build the fame. And TV then amplifies the effect of other channels where they see these brands that they're already familiar with. And then we trust these brands because we've seen them on TV. And overall, this drives the profitability of TV and makes it the #1 lead effectiveness medium. Thank you very much.